In this lecture, I will be talking about the history of paranormal entities and investigation. Civilizations have had a belief in the afterlife and spiritual entities since before the beginning of recorded time. The Aztecs believed that after death, the soul went to one of three places. The Aztec idea of the afterlife for fallen warriors and women who died in childbirth was that their souls would be transformed into hummingbirds that would follow the sun on its journey through the sky. Those who drowned would go to the first level of the upper worlds. Souls of people who died from less glorious causes would go to the lowest level of the underworld, taking 4 years and passing through many obstacles to reach this place. The spirits of human women who died in childbirth were not benevolent. On 5 specified days of the Aztec calendar, they descended to earth and haunted crossroads, hoping to steal the children whom they had not been able to have themselves. The Cantatas Mexicanos is an important collection of lyric poetry transcribed from an ancient Aztec dialect into Roman letters around 1550 CE. In his 1985 edition of these poems, John Berhorst interprets the poems as ghost songs that were intended to summon the spirits of dead Aztec warriors back to Earth to help their descendants under Spanish rule. If the songs were successful, the ghosts would descend from heaven fully armed and ready to fight, demanding payment in human sacrifice. The traditional Mayans lived in the continual presence of the grandfathers and grandmothers, who in the highlands are often conceived of as inhabiting specific mountains, where they expect the offerings of their descendants. In the past, too, the ancestors had an important role to play, with the difference that among the nobility, genealogical memory and patrilineal descent lines were much more emphasized. These first male ancestors, ritually defined as bloodletters and sacrificers, had given their private deities in a legendary land of origins called the Seven Caves and the Seven Canyons, and on their disappearance left a sacred bundle. In Chiapas at the time of the Spanish conquest, lineage ancestors were believed to have emerged from the roots of the ceiba tree. Comparable beliefs still exist among existing ancestors. Many people in medieval England believed in ghosts and the paranormal. Throughout the Middle Ages, one can find countless references about spirits of the dead wandering the land of the living. While at times they were things to be feared, these ghosts were usually not interested in haunting. Instead, these medieval specters often needed help. The stories about ghosts from medieval England and other parts of Europe were often connected to the Catholic idea of purgatory. Emerging in the 12th century, this was the belief that many souls did not go directly to heaven or hell. Instead, they would find themselves in an intermediate state where they had to cleanse themselves of their sins before entering paradise. The living, who were understandably anxious about the souls of their dead parents and other family members, had ways of helping them. Masses could be said for the souls of people, which would lessen the time that they spent in purgatory. By the later Middle Ages, the church had a lucrative business going on, and as they had set up a system known as chantries, people could then pay the salary of a priest to have them perform masses for particular people. This was also often set up by the person in their will with the masses to be done for them themselves, and by selling indulgences where people could literally pay money to have their time in purgatory reduced. If the soul was not in heaven or hell, it had to be somewhere, and that place could be hanging around earth, generally not getting in anyone's way. However, some spirits could appear to and interact with the living. Often they did so because they wanted their assistance in leaving purgatory. For example, one tale recorded in a 15th century book explained that a man was visited by the dark shadow of his dead mistress, who told him, "I can be freed from the punishment I am suffering if masses were said for me by good priests." In other cases, the ghost might ask a person to return a stolen good to its rightful owner, or even to pay a debt. In one story from 1457, a ghost demanded that his nephew go on a pilgrimage to Compostela in Spain, apparently the only place where a mass could be said that would release the uncle from purgatory. Among the numerous stories of paranormal activity written down in medieval England are 12 tales from Byland Abbey. Around the year 1400, one of the monks made use of a few leftover pages at the end of a book to record stories he had heard. These were often frightening tales. The monk was even scared to write it, but they reveal how people dealt with ghosts. Jacqueline Simpson, in her article, Repentant Soul or Walking Corpse, Debatable Apparitions in Medieval England, explains that most of the Byland stories have the following pattern. A living man encounters an alarming ghost. He urges it to say why it has appeared. It replies that it is suffering because of an unforgiven sin, which requires posthumous absolution and or some requiem masses. The living man informs a priest, who then fulfills the request, and the ghost can rest. And now consider this. The influence of witchcraft on society evolved over centuries, culminating in the hysteria that occurred in Europe and in the New England colonies that peaked between 1560 and 1660 during the Reformation. The Protestant and Catholics both pursued and treated the accused witches with the same degree of cruelty and torture. Peasants believed that witches should be punished for the pacts that they made with the devil and the acts that they made against the church. The torments were justified by their Protestants' beliefs, stated within the Malleus Maleficarum and the bull of Pope Innocent VIII. The increase of literature about the theology of witchcraft and the powers of Satan, the tensions in religious wars between the Protestants and Catholics, and the social anxieties all led to the fears and terrors of witchcraft during the Reformation. The Puritans' strict Protestant life and their fear of the devil and his servants made their New England society an easy target for the witchcraft hysteria. Primary and secondary sources from prominent 16th and 17th century Puritan ministers document the Puritans' strict way of living, views, fears, and fantasies. These specific Puritan beliefs, perspectives, and experiences led to and culminated in the witchcraft hysteria in colonial England. The Puritans' beliefs on God and Satan's interactions, Satan's powers and actions, and Satan's effects over the Puritan society were the basis of the Puritan society's witchcraft hysteria. Could these people accused of witchcraft have been plagued by malevolent spirits? Think about it. Someone walks by a window and sees dishes flying across the room with no one tossing them. Strange symbols appear on someone's skin. Doors opening and closing by themselves. These are all things that can be thought of as ghostly in modern times. What conclusions would they have jumped to then? But there were some in the 1800s that did understand what these entities were. In 1817, a very famous case called the Bell Witch Poltergeist was active in Adams, Tennessee. Also in 1817, an unknown scientist was also investigating apparent ghostly activity in the Tower of London. The term ghost hunter goes back as far as 1833 when used in the book titled The Ghost Hunter and His Family by Michael Banham. The tools used back then were ones without the luxury of electricity that we have now, but believe it or not, some of the tools are the same as we do use now. Dowsing rods were very popular, as was communicating with pendulums. Asking the spirit to make themselves known by making a noise or moving an object, such as tipping or knocking on a table. Also, automatic writing was very popular, and the use of compasses were widespread as well. The problem in those days was that none of these methods provided scientific proof. In modern times, we have digital recorders and cameras to document what we are finding, and as they say, a picture is worth 1,000 words. And then there is this. Paintings in caves in Africa that date back 300,000 years depict what is thought to be ghostly apparitions. That is before modern man existed. That is before any thought of religion or gods existed. So what this tells us is that man believed in ghosts before anything else. Today, these beliefs are still prevalent. Over half of the population still believe in these spirits. I will now leave you with your own conclusions on this.